Hello, nice to meet you guys. So we're not gonna go into rocket science when it comes to QA, but we're gonna talk about why QA has to be seen as a really important partner in video games development and software as a whole. Um, that being said, most people, when they think about QA or they had previously, let's say, poor experiences with quality assurance, they might think all we do is find bugs and we spend a lot of time testing the patience and challenge stress and blood levels of our friendly developers. That is not true. Those are just poor experiences that we need to build on and improve. What QA really do is that they're partners in quality and they ensure that everyone else's work, as well as their role in the product, reaches our end users in its best form possible. A good saying would be you either hear it from QA before it goes live and the product gets released, or you hear it from the community. Which one would you rather have, right? If we talk a bit about why team cohesion and feedback and problem finding are some of the most important aspects of QA, let's say that we all enjoy soccer. We like watching soccer and we see how well structured soccer teams are. We all enjoy having really good food and we also want to have healthy lifestyles. And if we do have to go and see a doctor, we want them to always have a proper assessment in place. Now, we might think, how is that related to quality assurance? The points that I have at the bottom, which are best QA teams are good critics and they can provide valuable feedback. The best QA teams help find solutions and they help assess long-term impact of whatever problems they come across. Relates to that. To give you a better example, imagine a soccer team that's striving for victory, right? Same with QA. The team comprises of strikers, you've got midfielders, defenders, you've got a goalkeeper. Each one is playing a crucial role in achieving common goal, which is winning the match, right? Similarly, in software development, we're just talking about games, developers and embedded in-house QA professionals, they all work together as a cohesive unit to deliver high-quality software, right? And they want to go towards success. Chefs can't taste their own food objectively. They need food critics to tell them how their food tastes. You need quality assurance to help you with feedback and express an end user point of view on whatever you're developing. And then last but not least, patients shouldn't self-diagnose. If you try to self-diagnose and you treat your own medical problems, you could make your health problems worse. So you need the doctor who is actually good and unbiased at providing assessment. Quality assurance usually works outside of what everyone else is doing by looking over the software development lifecycle, which means that they have unbiased, pure, well-focused feedback to provide. And we're going to talk a bit about why feedback is so important for quality assurance as well. When you want to have what we talked about earlier implemented, it's really important to start with proper recruitment and proper implementation. So let's say a generic approach to quality assurance based on today's standards is that you have both in-house testers and outsourced testers as well. The science behind that is that the bulk of manual testing that requires average turnaround time should always happen with outsourced resources. They're easy to send assignments to. They have a lot of workforce available. They can provide a lot of man hours to help execute whatever tests you need. While the research and the more complex tasks that require fast turnaround can be executed in-house. The embedded QA you recruit, train, and implement, they require some sort of, let's call it, a personality that focuses around being very passionate, spending a lot of time providing user feedback, understanding, let's call it, the in-depth risks of whatever you're developing and whatever problems you can come across. They create the action plans and test cases that everyone else execute. That is why those embedded testers can also provide user feedback and they can detect problems before they even arise. So if we would touch upon 4 things, which are efficiency, decreased bottlenecking, faster results, and issue prevention, we can understand why having embedded QA working closely with the development team is, I suppose, the answer, the key to success, right? You can increase efficiency and speed by embedding those testers in-house, in studio, working closely with developers and production individuals. So by that, I mean they work in the same room. They're there to help all the time. You can decrease bottlenecking by having embedded QA included in projects as early on as possible. Let's say from the planning phase altogether. You need QA involved early on. This is really, really important. That allows them to create that kind of assessment, and you don't spend a lot of time just finding out what they need to do. They already know in advance. They can provide faster results, and those results can be delivered through timely preparation. Having quality assurance embedded and present early on in the software development lifecycle means they have time to prepare efficiently. They can sharpen their skills. They can build databases of knowledge. They can track historical events or problems, and they can help you assess future challenges for the same project or other projects. And last but not least, the whole premise of issue prevention means that QA procedures and support are tailored to happen across multiple phases of the project, from design to pre-production to sending something live. A good example would be if you're working in mobile games development and you need to release marketing store shots, which are always scrutinized by Apple and Google guidelines and the stores. By having quality assurance working together, let's say with whoever handles your marketing store shots, they can raise any problems from a certification and compliance point of view before getting in trouble with the app stores themselves. The idea being they're there to help you prepare a lot. Most companies in the past used to use quality assurance later down the line in the development lifecycle, which caused problems to happen too late. That's what we want. We want to prevent those issues from happening. It's not about finding them. It's about making sure things go as planned. I mentioned feedback a couple of times, and it's important to build QA in such a way that they can provide feedback across that software development lifecycle. Effective feedback serves as a guiding force, right? So you're still in the development process towards the creation of a very polished and engaging game. If you would imagine that game development is like a spider web with all the other teams that are part of that development process in each corner, you've got quality assurance in the middle of it all, which means that QA get to see everything else that's happening, and they also get to see the final product coming together and taking shape. And who else can provide the most invaluable feedback if not the people who get to see the final product before it goes live, right? Trust me on this one. Feedback from QA is really, really important, especially towards game designer or people from, let's say, live ops, even marketing, and so on, and especially the community teams as well. Trying to summarize what we talked about, if we think about three major aspects about ensuring success for when working with quality assurance, and this is more for the QA guys listening onto this. Remember to get QA involved early on. They can use mockups, they can use concept art, they can use low fidelity wireframes, anything that the game team has that can be used to prepare and strategize in advance, right? Build your QA teams by being flexible. Make sure you have people with different kind of disciplines in place, not just people that are good at manual testing. And make sure that the processes that you use in QA are built around everyone else's needs. Client developers have different needs as opposed to backend developers. The R team have a different set of requirements or expectations from the QA team as opposed to the marketing team. So that means it's important to take the time to understand their needs, adapt those solutions to make them work for everyone, and be as flexible as possible with QA. And last but not least, focus on a collaborative implementation of QA, right? So tools should be used together with everyone else. Again, we need to understand the unique needs of the development teams. How do they want to have bugs tracked? How do they want to see summaries or reports from QA? It's not only about QA providing that information and service the way they feel they should. It's also adapting and collaborating with everyone else. Most of the successful teams that I've seen in QA build everything from the ground up, taking into consideration what the studio wants, not what the best practices in QA are. Each studio is independent and unique in its own way, right? Which leads to what would you be looking for when you want to build a QA team, and how do you kind of ensure that partnership is in place? Well, it starts with the people that you have, right? Key, from my point of view, to building the best QA teams is in finding authentic, open-minded individuals that are really, really passionate about what they're doing, right? You've got people who just do their testing and do their job because they just want to pay the bills. Or on the other side of the spectrum, you've got people who want to contribute to a successful project, and they feel like they have a purpose by being embedded and working closely with everyone else. A lot of studios fail by leaving QA secluded in a corner, so to speak, and just using them as a service provider instead of making them feel that they're part of the team and the end goal, right? With the right, genuine, good, and authentic people, you then just have to work on developing their skills. Each studio is unique, so I've seen huge CVs with a lot of experience underneath their belt for QA testers not performing as well as you might think, since they are already used to certain practices and procedures, which leads us back to the fact that every person you recruit and every process you implement in QA should be specific to the actual studio itself, right? Make it your absolute top priority as opposed to get to know each person in your team on a personal level. Make sure the developers create a bond with the testers so they have something to talk about besides just bugs. Otherwise, they will just be given bad news, right? That's what bugs are. They will be given bad news from the testers all the time instead of just having a friendlier approach to working together. So make sure the testers get to know the developers. You, as a lead or a manager, get to know your QA team and your testers, and everyone works together and they contribute together so they feel valued, right? And the last but not least, QA can be very, I suppose, repetitive to some degree, and it can easily lead to burnout. So make sure your QA guys get to have some sort of freedom in place where they get to pick the kind of projects or tasks they work on, have them shuffle around which developers they work with, have them work with different kind of tools more often than not, so things don't become stale. Staleness can happen really quickly with QA, especially if you're working on a very long project that might take, let's say, 2 years of development, right? You need to make sure people are challenged. And that brings us to the end of this. I know Oleg can share the PDF as well. If you want to go over the notes, you'll have my speaker notes in them as well, which are a little bit more detailed in case I talk too fast. But as a whole, think about how you can implement QA so they are involved, they're flexible, they have a collaborative approach to the development process and working with development teams. They're supposed to be part of that one team and not there just to execute manual testing and make sure things are unbroken. That is a very broad, wrong approach. They're very valuable contributors to it, right? Make sure the outsource guys do a lot of coverage and they handle a lot of the bulk of the work, and use the in-house guys to closely create a relationship with the development team so the developers feel that they have someone to turn to, and from that point on everything else will just fall into place no matter what issues you come across. That'll be it, guys, and thank you. Hopefully I didn't speak that fast.
All right, thank you very much, Robert. Let's check the question.
Right. So we've got a question here about, do you use different teams for K or just one for all aspect of it? I mean, functional. From Skynet Build, probably I pronounced that right. Usually, you have QA teams for each other individual team from the studio itself. So if you have, let's say, art, live operations, and monetization, you've got research and development, and you've got art as well. I mentioned that. You've got the backend coders, and you've got client coders. Roughly speaking, there's many more other teams as part of a studio. You can build your QA team and split it into small pods that are focused on helping each individual part of the studio. That's why I meant by saying QA should be very flexible. Have one huge QA team, but have individual people focusing and supporting each of those other teams, whatever their needs are. I've been in the industry as QA for a year now, so I wanted to ask how to stand out as a QA tester. Focus on creating a really good partnership with a development team that you work with. Again, feedback is really important. And the number one quality that makes people stand out in a quality assurance career is being really proactive, like very proactive. Be as proactive as possible. Don't wait for people to tell you what to do, and don't wait for tasks to come your way. The more proactive you are in QA, the more you create that sense of partnership with everyone else. Then you're going to get your LinkedIn commendations. People will talk about you. They will praise you. Just be as involved as possible. We've got another question here that says, does participating in public test environments qualify as experience in applying for a job? Yeah, of course. Like working as a freelance tester or being part of beta tests is quite important. Actually, that shows that you have a passion for testing. You have a passion for the gaming industry. And most of us look for passionate people when we want to build a passionate team, right? One more question is, how can you prevent yourself from burnout as QA? And if you fail in it, how to get out of it? If you fail in it, talk to your manager, tell them you're burned out, be open. I suppose make sure that when you look for a job to begin with, you have a manager that's open and eager to listen to whatever your problems are, so you can work on a solution together. And when it comes to actually trying to prevent from being burnout, that's when proactivity kicks in. Be proactive about asking for different challenges and tasks, and know when something is identified as the cause of creating said burnout, looking to do something different. Usually there are plenty of different challenges that a QA team can come across. Some managers fail to some degree at mixing up those challenges, leading to the same tester working on the same project, like I've said earlier, and executing the same tasks all over again, which then leads to burnout. So keep it all mixed up. The simplest answer would be what I'm used to. People would come over and they would just ask for something new to do, for something different. What is your advice for people who have no experience and want to be a QA tester? If you're honest, well, QA is usually, to be told, considered as a launching ramp in the game, launching ramp, in the gaming industry. It's good managers and good recruiters hire the potential behind a person as opposed to the actual experience. To be told, people can be taught a lot. So if you do want to start in QA, try and prove how passionate you are. And that goes back to another question someone asked. Execute public tests, try some freelance work, like on Upwork, whatever websites we've got out there. Be part of some Discord communities and contribute with feedback. There's plenty of games who have open betas out there through Kickstarters or whatever. Be part of those and help them out with whatever bugs you can find. And there is a lot of knowledge available to go through. on Atlassian's website. So if you look, they're the guys who created Jira and Confluence. They have a lot of experience that if you go over all the documentation that Jira and Confluence provide, you can actually learn the basics. Obviously, you can go and get yourself certified as a tester, but mostly just get involved in the community. A lot of play testing. Okay, a little bit of a technical problem there. Have you used any generative AI recently in your QA processes? If yes, which part? There are a lot of tools out there, although what I am personally used to are bespoke in-house tools. You can use AI to help you create, let's say, test cases or run comparison checks around art assets in the game. Um, I think a better approach would be to look at automating whatever cumbersome work you come across in your team by working closely with both the development team, QA, and automation engineers, as opposed to just using whatever generative AI tools you've got out there. Most approaches to automation require an in-house approach, truth be told. And I think those are all the questions for now, Oleg.
Yes, there's if there's more questions coming in, there might be. So thank you very much. I'll just check. Let's just give it a few. We still have a little bit of time, so just a couple of minutes.
If you don't have supportive management, how would you go about convincing them QA is an important part of development rather than bug fixing at the end of post-production thing? In my case, what helped convince other people that introducing QA in a certain way or making them stand out as being important as part of the development process was by providing historical data. If we do a really good job in QA of tracking whatever problems we came across and we execute, let's say, post-mortems of, better yet, give you an example. If you've got some problems that happen and you know that following the process that we talked about would help, and you need to convince people that QA is important, use those problems as examples. Try and look historically how they could have been avoided. Let's say a simple method would be the 5 whys. You sit down together as a group and you ask yourself why 5 times until you understand the root cause of the problem. And you get to kind of show said management that having QA as part of the development process at certain points in time would have led to you never coming across that problem, as opposed to bug fixing at the end of the post-production thing. Then it's important to also make sure that if you do have QA as part of the development process, they don't cause a lot of noise. So the structure has to be very thorough. Make sure there's not too much question asking. There aren't enough. There isn't that much noise, I suppose. There's no other way of putting it. It does come down to how you implement it as well. QA could just, for example, be part of certain design meetings and simply listen in and prepare based on that information, as opposed to always interrupting developers with questions, or as opposed to being present in meetings and then hijacking them. There's some meeting conduct and communication conduct rules that have to be in place. Most people are worried about QA causing a lot of noise, to be told. Once you get that out of the way and you handle communication, everything else should just fall in place. There's another question: what are the QAs in art like 2D and 3D art? I'm not sure what that question refers to. It could be a very broad answer. You could have people who just check said art assets from a human point of view if they look good enough, or it could be related to benchmarking. You've got a lot of art in a game, so a lot of QA in art requires benchmarking and making sure that different hardware combinations perform as expected for said art. Again, that's a very broad question.
I have a question from my side, what I'm interested about. Are there any AI tools that you use in QA, like nowadays?
No, truth be told, like I've said earlier, they're bespoke in-house tools. At every studio that I was part of, we've built our own tools for automation. And if it is actual AI is good at writing test cases if you don't have a lot of manpower available. But it still requires a human being reviewing them and putting in the right prompts. This, which is a general thing with AI, you need to know how to put in the right prompts. So you still need to feed it the right design documentation, and then you have to make sure that whatever test cases it spits out, you can then agree on them together with the developer, so to speak.
One more. What if your QA team in those meetings come up with real assessment from all the info shared by the design team? Can they provide those doubts?
Yeah, of course. I mean, usually you wouldn't want to hijack someone's meeting. You would just collate whatever risks you have in a nice format where you kind of explain what areas of the game before launch or post launch can be affected by those design doubts, let's call them. Usually, you can have triage meetings happen on a weekly basis where you agree that QA is going to provide feedback on a weekly basis, and we're going to review said feedback and understand how it could affect the product. That I don't think there's a problem with how the information is shared, or if people from QA join a meeting by providing feedback. It's how it's presented. It has to be constructive. It QA teams sometimes fail, and it looks like they're you know um, very strong sided when it comes to their feedback. So you need to think about the larger picture as well, and they need to be formatted and presented in an extremely constructive manner so everyone can take it on board. Game designers usually get easily offended by said feedback. What helps is finding, let's say, similar products on the market or competitor products and compare the feedback, show maybe where other teams have done better and where we can also do better as well.
Thank you. Thank you. As agreed, if you can stay here and answer the questions in the chat, but we need to continue with the program.
Thank you very much. Bye.